In the early 1800s, few names carried as much influence in New Orleans society as Madame Delphine Lalourie. Born into a wealthy Creole family, Delphine was surrounded by privilege from the very beginning. She married multiple times, eventually becoming the wife of Dr. Leonard Lalourie. Together, they lived in luxury. Their home on Royal Street became known for its lavish gatherings filled with prominent guests, music, and conversation. To those who attended, Delphine appeared refined, polite, even generous. But beneath that carefully maintained image, something darker was beginning to take shape. Long before the fire that would expose everything, there were signs. Rumors began to circulate quietly through the streets of New Orleans. Stories of harsh treatment, of fear among those who lived and worked inside the home. One incident in particular stood out. A young enslaved girl, terrified and trying to escape punishment, ran to the roof of the mansion. Moments later, she fell to her death. Whether she slipped or jumped, no one could say for certain. But the story spread, and for a brief moment, authorities intervened. Delphine Lalourie was forced to sell several enslaved individuals. It should have been the end, but it wasn't. Records suggest she later regained them through relatives, which meant the warning signs had been there, and still nothing truly stopped it. On April 10th, 1834, everything changed. A fire broke out inside the mansion. Smoke filled the halls. Neighbors rushed to help, but when they entered the home, they found something unexpected. An elderly enslaved woman, chained to a stove. She later confessed that she had started the fire herself, not to escape, but to avoid being taken somewhere worse, the attic. Because, according to her, those who were taken there never came back. What rescuers found next would define the mansion forever. Forced entry was made into the attic, a place rarely seen by guests and carefully kept out of sight. Inside, they found enslaved individuals who had been hidden away, chained, malnourished, barely alive. Some were too weak to stand. Others showed clear signs of prolonged suffering. Even by the standards of the time, this was beyond comprehension. But what made the discovery even more disturbing were the reports that followed. Stories began spreading across New Orleans, describing conditions that went beyond cruelty. Accounts that suggested prolonged restraint, severe mistreatment, and suffering that had been hidden for far too long. To this day, historians debate how much of those reports were exaggerated. But what is not debated is that what was confirmed inside that attic was already horrifying enough. When news spread through New Orleans, outrage turned into fury. A mob gathered outside the mansion. They didn't come to investigate. They came to destroy. Windows were shattered, doors torn apart, rooms ransacked. The home that once hosted elegant parties was reduced to chaos. But the woman responsible was nowhere to be found. Madame Delphine Lalourie had fled. She escaped the city before she could be arrested. Some accounts claim she traveled to Europe, possibly Paris. Others suggest she lived out the rest of her life in secrecy. But one thing remained certain: she was never held accountable. No trial, no confession, no explanation, only questions. The Lalourie mansion did not stay abandoned forever. It was rebuilt. Over the years, it served many purposes: a school, apartments, a private residence, But no matter who lived there, the stories never stopped. Almost immediately after the events of 1834, reports began. Strange sounds echoing through empty rooms. Footsteps where no one was walking. Whispers, cries, and sometimes screams. Visitors and residents alike have described shadowy figures seen through the windows. Sudden, overwhelming feelings of dread. Cold spots that appear without explanation. Some believe the spirits of those who suffered there remain. Others believe something even more unsettling, that the pain itself never left. Today, the mansion still stands on Royal Street, restored on the outside, but forever marked by its past. It is privately owned and not open to the public. Yet, people still gather outside, drawn by its reputation, by the history, by the feeling that something about the place isn't right. Even those who don't believe in the paranormal often admit the same thing. There's an energy there, a heaviness that's hard to explain. There was never a confession, no clear motive, no explanation for why any of it happened, which leaves behind something even more disturbing than the story itself. Questions. Why would someone do something like that? How did it go on for so long? And how many people suspected but chose not to see? The story of the Lalourie mansion is not just a ghost story. It's not just history. It's something in between. A place where real suffering left behind something that may never fully disappear. Because sometimes the most haunted places aren't the ones filled with spirits. They're the ones filled with memories.